Like you said about the track, amongst the classiest things there are the ones on four legs.
The arches.
No, the classiest
Yay,
ones.
Michael's here. We thought you weren't gonna make it.
No way. Oh, you have a hot flash?
I am. How'd you know?
I don't know. You're like,
I feel it coming on.
It's probably me.
No, it's me.
Yeah, too bad. I think you don't have that.
Good evening. This meeting is being held in accordance with the public laws of 1975, Chapter 231. An adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a notice sent to the Asbury Park Press, Two River Times, and Star Ledger, and posted in the main lobby of the municipal building and on the municipal website. Please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Morandi?
Here.
Councilmember Kurtulon?
Present.
Councilmember Triviano?
Here.
Councilmember Ballard? Here. And Councilmember Linder?
I'd like to read a proclamation for Women's History Month for March. Whereas in honor of Women's History Month, we celebrate all of the achievements and contributions women have made. Over the course of the history of our nation, women have played a crucial role in advancing social justice, led groundbreaking scientific discoveries, enriched our culture with remarkable works of art and literature, and charted bold directions in our foreign policy. And whereas the National Women's History Alliance, which creates and promotes National Women's History Month each March, has announced Celebrating Women Who Tell Our Stories as the 2023 theme. And whereas this month we are encouraged to recognize women, past and present, who have been active in all forms of media and storytelling. Throughout their careers and lives, women from every part of society have devoted their lives and talents to producing art and news, pursuing truth, and reflecting the values of our society. And whereas women's history is one of resilience, and women went from being denied the right to vote or hold public office until the early 1900s, to our country's first female vice president being elected to office in 2020. And whereas women of the United States have stories to tell about their scientific contributions to the early space program, the modernization of computer programming, the development of a vaccine to combat the COVID-19 virus, and serving in positions of power in boardrooms, the education system, medicine, politics, and the military. This month we honor women for being the foundation upon which this nation was built. Now, therefore, I, William Portman, Mayor of the Borough of Red Bank, do hereby proclaim and observe March is designated as Women's History Month, and call upon the citizens to observe March as Women's History Month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 8th day of March, 2023. Okay, next up, is Bob here? Oh yeah, there he is. We have a Broadwalk presentation from Bob Zuckerman, head of the River Center.
Is this on? Yes, it is. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I provided to Chief earlier today, so hopefully we can put that up as well for the folks in the audience and those
He's working on it.
and those watching from home. We're good? I should just start. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. My name is Bob Zuckerman. I'm the Executive Director of the Red Bank River Center. I want to thank Mayor Portman and everyone on the council for allowing me to present to you our plan for the Broadwalk for 2023. And We'll start off with just a little bit of, just a very brief bit of history about the Boardwalk. As you probably all know, the Boardwalk started as a result of the COVID pandemic, and everyone I was not part of the River Center at that point, but of course everybody was trying to figure out what we could do to keep our restaurants alive. So as a response to that, we started in 2020, and then my understanding is it continued the next summer, 2021, because it was still very popular. COVID was still with us to a certain degree, not as bad as 2020, but still with us to a certain degree. And then we continued again last summer, and as you'll recall, last summer we got a very late start on Broadwalk. We started at the very tail end of July, and then went through October 2nd was the last day, and that of course was because of the road construction project that wasn't complete until the end of July. So you may ask, or one may ask, why are we looking to bring Broadwalk back when all of the restaurants are open for business and people can dine inside now? And I have a few suggestions as to why we want to bring it back. First of all, we have surveyed our businesses as much as we can. We didn't get responses from everybody, certainly. But from those who did respond, 2/3 of them supported both the streeteries that we have or have had in the past and the Broadwalk. And then after minor changes were made, that number went up to 3/4 support. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, we believe that downtown Red Bank needs place-making activities in the warmer months. And I know you've all heard this before, but it is true, especially as we get into the summer. We're competing with places like Asbury Park and Long Branch and Seabright, beach towns. We don't have a beach here. We have a beautiful river, but no beach. So this provides a real destination point for downtown Red Bank. Third reason, the residents are telling us, now this is anecdotal, but telling us, meaning me and our staff and our board, that they love it. Is that 100% true? No, but you can't get 100% support for anything. But the overwhelming majority of people that we speak to say that they very much love the Broadwalk and want it to return. And then the fourth reason that we're looking to return is, quite frankly, it's a beautiful addition to our downtown. The restaurants who participate in Broadwalk do an amazing job of putting out beautiful, beautiful setups, and then we string the lights, and it's really quite remarkable. A lot of publications, both print publications and online publications, use pictures of the Broadwalk when they refer to Red Bank. I just saw one yesterday. The new director of tourism at Monmouth County sent us that we were featured in Thrillist, which is a very popular online publication for places to go, things to do. They mentioned 8 small towns in New Jersey that you should visit from New York City. Red Bank was one of them, and the picture right there, picture of the Broadwalk. Now, that being said, we know that the Broadwalk, that we've had some challenges with it, and that's what I want to address tonight, how we're going to deal with those challenges, or what our plan is. I look at them as 4 major challenges. The first one, we've heard from a lot of people, and we know that it's a lot less crowded during the weekdays, not weekends, and not so much weeknights, of course, because people are dining, but during the weekdays, it can be pretty quiet there. So that's challenge number 1. Challenge number 2, we've had these unsightly orange barrels at both ends of the Broadwalk, which we have needed to have because of safety reasons. We have the bollards now, but the bollards, as you know, they're short. They're not tall bollards. So cars, trucks, other vehicles can't necessarily see that there is a blockage ahead of them. So we put up those orange barrels. not the most attractive. Number three, we did create 2 new loading zones last year, but even with those new loading zones, we heard stories that there were still trucks loading and unloading on Mechanic Street. And we know that there's obviously a fire company there, and that's problematic for them, so we're looking to address that issue head on. And then the fourth, we've heard some complaints about excessive trash on the Broadwalk, and we're looking to deal with that as well. So next slide is how are we going to address these challenges? What are we looking to do? So the first one is about the lack of daytime foot traffic on weekdays. And one of the elements that we're looking to bring to this is a community tent. This would be a 10 by 20 approximately tent, size 10 feet by 20 feet tent, that we would, this is a picture of one that I did in downtown Westfield, but you could see the bistro tables and chairs that we brought under that tent. And the reason for that is that it will allow anybody to get takeout food from anywhere and bring it to Broadwalk and eat under the tent, eat outside. So it's not just the restaurants that are directly on the Broadwalk. Anybody can participate in this. In addition to the takeout, we're going to create a new page on our website, which will have linked to a QR code, which will be on the tables themselves, and that'll link them to a page on the website which has a list of the restaurants that are looking to deliver right to the Broadwalk, so that people can actually get food from other establishments. We'll work with the restaurant delivery folks, we'll work with Uber Eats and DoorDash to have food delivery right to the tent, which I think is pretty cool. So that's one element of our plan to address the daytime foot traffic issue. Second one is to add more weekday programming. So you see here a picture of a partnership that we had with the Recreation Department with Oscar, and we look to do a lot more of partnerships, not only with Recreation, but with other nonprofits like Lunch Break, HabCorp, BASI potentially, Art Academy, have art classes outside. And now that we have time, unlike last year where we were kind of just thrown into this in July, we'll have a lot more time to do outreach to our businesses, so we can have more exercise classes, vendor markets potentially outside. There's a whole range of things that we can do now that we have time to schedule. Okay, so that's the daytime weekday foot traffic issue. Next issue is, what do we do about these ugly orange barrels that you see there on the left? Well, they have bollard covers that you can purchase. In fact, I think there's a website called bollardcovers.com, I swear to God. I'm not kidding, there is, but that's not the only place you can buy them. But as you can see here from these pictures, you can create different colors. They make them in candy canes. They have the blue ones and red ones and white. You know, if we want to do red, white, and blue for July 4th, we could do that. I mean, it's all sorts of creative ways to these covers go over the bollards and can go up fairly high. And we think that will solve that problem, the sight problem with traffic. Next issue, dealing with the loading and unloading. So I mentioned before the whole issue that we've had on Mechanic Street with trucks loading and unloading. And there's a few things that we can do. Obviously, number one, we can just create bigger and better signage that trucks can't load and unload there when Broadwalk is open. The second thing we can do, and I've already spoken to the chief about this, is that we can enforce this a lot better. That we can issue tickets and fines for companies that violate this plan. And then the third element is that I'm already working and communicating with the restaurants to coordinate with their vendors that their vendors cannot load and unload on Mechanic Street, period, end of story, where they're going to get fined. And I'm working with a bunch of the restaurateurs, including Dominic from Catch 19, who has suggested that it's their restaurant and Char and Surf Taco that are the biggest sort of, because they're all on the east side of the street there, and they're the ones that mostly use the loading and unloading on Mechanic. So we're working with them to address their vendors so that there is no issue during the Boardwalk season. Next challenge, we talked about the trash. So we do have a staff member, P.O., who's been working with us for many years. He starts with us at 12 o'clock. First thing he will do is clean the community area and the street every day. But we won't stop there. We're going to hire additional, at least one, if not more, additional folks to clean, so that we have cleaning at least twice a day, and then again on the weekends when it gets really busy, so that we can keep the area as nice and tidy as possible. And then, of course, coordinating with the restaurants themselves on keeping their areas, making sure that they keep their areas clean. So that's the cleanliness problem. And those are, that's pretty much the four challenges that we see that we can address head on, and that I believe this plan has addressed head on. I wanted to touch just briefly, if I could, on the streeteries. I know that the streeteries were popular in 2020, 2021, and last year there weren't any. Although you allowed for them, no one participated. And what all the restaurants told me was that the reason they didn't participate was the cost. In fact, I spoke to a restaurateur today who had gone out and purchased tables and chairs, all in thinking that she would be able to put those tables and chairs out in the streetery. And then when the price tag came in and it was going to cost her $6,000, her response to me today was, I don't want to work for nothing. So for her, it just wasn't worth it to spend that kind of money to put those tables and chairs out. So essentially, she sat on them. So that's why no one participated last year. And we would urge the lowering of the fees for the streeteries back to 2021, which brings me to my second last slide, which is, here is our formal request to all of you. Of course, we want to bring the Boardwalk back, so we'd love to have you authorize that we can do that. We're looking at it from May through October. That's that's what we're looking at, but we can, we're flexible. We can discuss that, but we definitely would like to bring it back. The second point is that we'd like to keep the fees constant on the Boardwalk from last year. So we're not asking for a reduction in Boardwalk fees, but we'd like to keep it constant, no increase. And then the third request is on the streeteries. If we want to bring them back, we just have to lower the fees. It's just as simple as that. The restaurants are not going to participate at the fee level that we had last year. So we would respectfully request that you consider lowering the fees to 2021 levels. And that concludes my presentation. I want to thank you all again for the opportunity to present this to you. I know that no decision is going to be made tonight, but we would love to have decision made, certainly in April, so that we have time to coordinate everything, plan everything, and make it more successful than ever. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. I have a question, actually.
Sure.
Where do you see the tent being placed?
Good question, Councilwoman. I see it being placed right now in front of Coco Paris. Would be a great spot. I actually measured it out, that it's about 20 feet wide, and 10 feet out from the curb would put it just a couple feet from the parking spot line, and that would give plenty of room for emergency vehicles to come through if they had to. Now, if Coco Paris space gets rented, we have to come up with a plan B, obviously. But it has been vacant for a little while, and we think that would be a good spot for it on the northern end.
And how do you see the DoorDash thing working? Because I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So would they stop at the bollard and people would have to walk out?
Yeah, no, that's another good question. How I see it working is that we've reached out. We haven't spoken to them yet, DoorDash and Uber. But how we see it working is we would like to see if they can build into their system where people can actually put the Broadwalk as an address. So when they're asking for delivery, when they're online on their phone trying to get delivery, they can place, instead of address, your home address, you put Broadwalk, table 5. Every table will be marked. And then the delivery people can literally bring it right to the Broadwalk, right to the tent. Because that'll be the only place where deliveries will be going. They won't be going, obviously, to the restaurants that are already set up there.
I think though, that, Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, but the car that pulls up to deliver the food to the Broadwalk, are we gonna have an allowance for where that car is parking?
So the cars, no cars, so they can't drive to the Broadwalk area. They have to find, if they're driving, they have to actually find a parking spot, or they can use one of the 2 loading zones that we had last year. One was on Front Street in front of Urban Outfitters, and the other was in front of Smoothie King, so back there. And then it's a block walk, and they gotta walk it.
But they can use the
And
loading
they can use,
zone?
yeah, and they can use bicycles too, if they're delivering by bicycle. And if it's close enough, obviously they can just walk there. If it's a restaurant that's further out, that's a different story.
I have a question about the cleanup area.
Sure.
So obviously we know we would focus on Broad, but how far off of Broad would the people who are cleaning and maintaining the areas? Because people go out, they dine, they have a good time, and they either stroll home or they stroll through the neighborhoods. What area will be covered by those maintenance people?
Sure. So that part of Broad Street would be the main area, but our staff person, PO, goes out and cleans 5 days a week now, and we would just ask him to focus around the Broadwalk area, so White Street, Mechanic, Wallace, Monmouth, in the general vicinity. We would just talk to them and ask them to focus in that general area. So I hope that answers your question. Any other questions?
No, Bob is actually.
Oh, go ahead. Thank you, I appreciate it. Bob, I just wanted to thank you for your thorough work, as always. I've been hearing a lot of what you said. Of course, you said, seriously, but I'm hearing from residents and people that there's overwhelming support for Broadwalk. I've even actually heard from some newer residents that Broadwalk was one of the reasons they chose to move to Red Bank. Younger couples that were looking for community, they were moved by Broadwalk. My son can't wait to get back in there. That we'll be hanging out there all the time. I think the addition of communal tables and tables that you can bring takeout for, those Red Bistro tables were a wonderful addition last year. They were very, very busy. To see that idea expanded on, I think would be wonderful. I'm glad that you laid out the cleaning plan and the loading plan. I know that's been something that's been on the fire department's mind, as well as the businesses who really want to get their delivery drivers to listen to the issue, because they all want to see this project go forward. So I just wanted to thank you for your thorough work. I really appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
So Bob, would that tent come down?
No, the tent would stay up. The tent would stay up through the course of the Broadwalk. That's the plan. 7 days a week. Just like the other setups stay up 7 days a week.
So do you have a design of that you would be able to provide? And
We could certainly provide. We haven't had it constructed yet, but because I'd love to see if I can get a custom one that says Broadwalk with our Red Bank logo would be really great. Hopefully we can pull that off by the time Broadwalk starts, assuming that we do bring it back. But if not, can always go with the basic color red. But yes, we can procure a 10 by 20 tent. That's what we're looking to do.
I'm just thinking if we have inclement weather, wind,
right? So it has
of that flying away, somebody getting hurt.
Yeah.
Where does that fall?
Yeah, it has to be very secured. So what we did in Westfield, I don't know if we can go back to that slide, but we see, I mean, that tent was, we had like major storms during that time. And those tents were so secured to bricks and you know, Jersey barriers and whatever, and I'd have to work with the chief to make sure that that was not a problem, that was not an issue. I will tell you that we were fortunate that we didn't have any blowing tables, chairs, that didn't happen. That being said, if we know that a big storm is coming, right, we should make a plan for removing those tables and chairs until that storm passes. And then trying to use some of the businesses on that street who we hope would cooperate with us and store those, you know, a few here, so that the tent was empty.
And was the thought that River Center would buy the bollard covers?
Yes.
Even possibly, Bob, seeing if the owner of the vacant Coco Parade or the other vacant building that's currently there, if they would be open to those being used for that storage.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it certainly can't hurt to ask. So.
Yeah, it's hurricane season, right?
In September,
So
it is, yeah.
all the way through.
Yeah.
But I did send you a couple of emails based on the conversation we had at last week's River Century board meeting. And I look forward to having additional conversations with you and with Jamie next week. I know you and I will have some FaceTime next week.
Yes.
And but I did send Jamie an email too with some of the other ideas and a couple of websites for you guys to look at to help increase the traffic in that vacant part of the day, to see what we can do to stimulate activity downtown.
Thank you, Councilman. And like I said earlier, if you know, the earlier that we know that we can move forward with this, the more programming we can do.
And just for Bob's sake, before we leave, I mean, is everybody comfortable with saying that we're good with that start date, just so that he's aware that we're going to move forward with this? I don't think there's anyone in the council that gets the start date, but nobody's verbally said that they're for it, so it might be helpful.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Not going to commit to any start date at this point. I think, you know, additional conversations are needed. Bob, thank you for the conversation. Speaking only for myself, as far as Broadwalk itself, fantastic, you know. But I think the start date is definitely something where we could have ongoing conversations.
Is there a reason?
I don't want to make a spot decision. That's my reason.
I mean, the
Council?
Broadwalk has been going on, you know, for years now. There's a really great rhythm. Bob just presented, you know, a lot of what the concerns were and how they'll be alleviated. I believe it's our responsibility to let the businesses that are involved and the people involved a little bit of a heads up. We are in March. He's asking for a May start date. That means that we'd have to be moving on a resolution to move forward in the future. So I just wanted to hear from the other council members if, you know, if there was an appetite for that start date that he just presented.
I don't think we need to answer tonight. It was a great presentation and the information and what you're proposing, because there's some other things in the presentation as well. So I guess my question would be, Mayor, are you going to put together a little committee to go through this, or how do you want to handle Broadwalk?
Listen, it's not like it's the first year that we're doing it. I think we know the issues. I think they were laid out pretty well here in this presentation. I'm thinking if we have any, are you thinking you have additional questions that you just haven't thought of now to?
Oh, I'm talking about going through some of the items and then plus some of the requests, right? So if you put together a little committee, you take the lead, and then
I'm more than happy to do that. So we can, you know, I'd love to have something. I'd love to be proposing it by the next meeting, so then we have, you know, I mean, just realistically, if you look at the calendar, right, we have one more meeting in March, 2 in April, and then we're there. So there's definitely some urgency on it. But yeah, I'm happy to put together a working group and try and get this done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I believe, I'm with the mayor on this one though. I believe one of the reasons why we didn't sabotage this with subcommittee is because most of this has been worked out. I mean, this has been worked out over years. Bob really just presented, all that is left. If there's minor tweaks or things that need to be worked out along the way, that's one thing. But overall, I mean, this project is, has taken on its own life and does its thing. I'm unsure what, the necessity of a further subcommittee would be beyond what we've already been presented. It's not our job to micromanage the day-to-day operations of the borough or River Center. So I'm just unsure what the necessity of a subcommittee at this point is at this stage of this project.
And Darren, I just had one question. Was there a fee structure for or maybe Bob knows from last year, was there a fee structure for participating in the Broad Walk?
Yes, yes, it was by linear foot, I think by linear foot.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something
Councilwoman,
we
I think.
still need to work on because there were some gaps in that whole process last year.
And
So depending on how much space each restaurant took, was their fee per month. It was a set, I don't remember exactly what it was.
but it was
right.
in accordance with the Sidewalk Cafe.
The fee structure was different. It was on the same application, but the dollar amount was different.
But in parallel, sort of the way the amount of space and the number of tables and chairs that you could fit in it, right?
We didn't govern the number of tables and chairs. It was just the linear foot. Basically, a 20-foot parking spot was equal. The equivalent of a 20-foot parking spot was the equivalent of X number of dollars. I believe is how it worked.
That was for the street eaters.
Right, for the street eaters.
So that's why we need to take a look, because we don't even have, we still have that gap. It looks like we didn't get all the funds from last year, so we need to put together the process around this. So we need to take a look at that.
What's the gap?
The gap was that it was extended partway through the summer. I believe there was an extension, right, at some point in the summer. And
Yes, we extended it through September. I think originally it was going to end on Labor Day, if I recall.
I believe
and then we
so.
extended it through September.
and there was some gaps
Right.
in trying to get some of
And we got a late
those
start
entities
with
to
the
make
road.
payments.
We got a very
for
late
the
start,
extra
right.
time.
Right. Yeah, plus, additionally, in addition to the late start, I think the council voted on it days before, if I recall, before we actually started the boardwalk, so,
All right.
because of the construction thing.
Well, and we have some bollard issues that we need to resolve as well. But yeah, I think it'll be a good season. Well,
Good,
all right, and we'll
Good.
talk next week.
terrific.
Thank you.
Okay? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And I'm available if people have follow-up questions. I'm around for a little while.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up I want to call for public comments on agenda items only. Again, these are public comments for agenda items only.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I just like to, I know we had this on our special meeting, the 3% tax for the transient rentals. I'm gonna ask my council to, again, table this because there's been some conflicting information. I've been getting emails back and forth about a 3% tax that Airbnb is charging and sending to Red Bank. And I wasn't aware of that, and she keeps insisting that it is. So before we move forward, I want to have all my ducks in a row and make sure that there's nothing, even if Airbnb is sending us money or saying they're sending us money, I want to straighten all that out before we move forward with this particular ordinance. I don't think it's that important that we move it tonight, but we need to get all the information before we do. So I'm going to ask that we table it once again.
I know Laura had done some research on that, but use this time to even figure out there were still some fees that we were unclear of, so I'm fine with that being tabled. So Can I get a motion to table the introduction of the ordinance about the 3% transient accommodation occupancy tax?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Do we need a roll call? Or we just, yeah, all in favor? All right.
Aye.
We will table this motion for now on the 3% transient accommodation occupancy tax.
Good evening, Bill Blackwood, 34 Chestnut Street. Sorry. I'd be very interested in having council set some long-term, high-level policy and direction along the lines of being climate friendly. And given the fact that we don't have a clear direction, I think things
I'm sorry to
occur
interrupt. I
case
don't
by
mean to
case.
be rude, but I think we're only talking about agenda items right
Yes,
now.
and since we don't have that sort of long-term direction set, things are sort of case by case. And I see on the agenda there is something about purchasing vehicles. I'm guessing those are
Okay.
gas-powered vehicles.
Okay, you're getting there. Okay, gotcha.
Thank you. All right, so purchasing vehicles that burn gas is committing the planet to carbon emissions that cause global warming. And there is a way to evaluate the impacts of that. The standard way is the social cost of carbon. So just by purchasing the vehicle, you put it out on the road. The borough may not have it forever, but over the lifetime of the vehicle, it can emit a lot of CO2. It looks like we're purchasing multiple vehicles, let's just say 4. Ballpark estimates would be, over their lifetime, they'd emit about 800,000 pounds of CO2, which is a greenhouse gas. And using the latest values for the social cost of carbon, that would result in about $80,000 of damages to people globally. So I think it's irresponsible to continue using fossil fuels if we have an alternative, and I would much prefer to have some high-level policy set so that we don't have to do this case by case. But I just want to register my objection to purchasing vehicles that would use fossil fuels. Any questions?
Well, I saw that on the agenda, and I spoke to Gary at the DPW. His concern specifically was at the current level of electric pickup trucks, we're not going to be able to do the work that was needed for the borough. So if you have, for example, a snowstorm, again, and we're putting out trucks with plows on them that are running through the night, there was a concern that the electric vehicles wouldn't have the power to handle the job.
Do we know that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't know about the power of moving the snow, but I know that they can't run for as long as we run them on one charge. So we run those vehicles for 24 to 36 hours straight during a snowstorm. And, obviously if they run out of gas, we pull up to the gas pumps and 3 or 4 minutes later, they're ready to go again. That wouldn't, of course, be true if it was an electric vehicle. They can't go for 36 hours on a few minutes of charge. So that's a challenge. As far as the horsepower behind them, I couldn't answer that.
That's not an issue. All right, so something to keep in mind. If we look at the national goals and the state goals, those are consistent. Those are to cut emissions in half by 2030. And for us to reach that kind of goal, we have to be moving on it now. So let's.
I thank you, Phil. I had brought that up to Gary maybe a month ago or a few weeks ago, but thank you for staying on it.
Thank you.
Boris Kaufman, you have the floor.
Good evening, Boris Kaufman, 28 Riverside Avenue. Just wanted to follow up on the boardwalk. First, thanks to Bob for, I don't know, but thanks for all the improvements that you're planning. I would, I'm one of the people who walk the boardwalk, and I would love to see it open earlier than May. I mean, April gets, the temperatures get into the 60s, 70s in April, and so, well, let's think about getting it open early. Thank you.
Thank you, Boris.
Ben Farr, 16 Locust Avenue. I'm only speaking for myself on the regards to the report from River Center. I just wanted to comment that I'd like to see the trash or whatever it is the River Center is going to do with the borough done really early, because I think one of the consistent things I've heard from residents who get up early in the morning that it's pretty disheartening to go into the downtown jogging or whatever at 7 o'clock and to see a mess. So I'm wondering if we could figure out some way to either pick them up late or pick it up in the morning. It would be, I think, it would be a big improvement. Having it sit around until 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday is really, I don't think, a good idea. That's it.
Thank you.
Suzanne Visconti, 25 Cedar Street. Uber driving. I actually Uber driving for the last 3 months to pay for my campaign. And I noticed with Uber driving, there's a lot of double parking, a lot of leaving their cars running to run in and out. So my concern is with Broadwalk, it's a great idea, and there's not a lot of, you can communicate when you order your food, go to Broadwalk, look for table 4. It's built in with the comments. You have a great communication with whoever you're dropping the food to, as I've done through this whole town. I've been doing it religiously for a while. Well, my concerns overall for Uber has been the idling of the cars, and I'm even told by restaurants, park in the fire zone and get the food. I'm assuming it's illegal to park in the fire zone, correct? But they park in the fire zone. I've also noticed a lot of people parking in the handicap spots, like behind certain restaurants, because it's not a very public visible area. I've seen that happen. And when we talk about traffic in this town, that's when it gets backed up. When they're parking their car, double parking, running into Starbucks or Spices or wherever. I mean, it is a pain, trust me, because I don't want to get in trouble. I hustle from White Street parking lot and I hustle to the Dublin House to get across to the restaurant and hustle back over in the cold. But it'd be great. Uber to use is a cool idea, but we really need to enforce it because you're hurting the environment and you're hurting traffic, but it's a cool system. And they make good tips.
Good points, thank you.
Barbara Boas, 135 Branch Avenue. I didn't realize that Broadwalk was going to be on the in this part of the agenda, but that's all right. I'll give you my spiel now. I love what Bob brought to us today. I thought it was wonderful. I'm a little disappointed to hear that the council has not the plan in writing and ready to go, because that was what they were promised us last summer, last September, last October. None of this has been done. You should be ashamed of yourselves. The people in this town love this. The people outside this town come in and spend their money here, and our merchants stay here because of this, and you're thumbing your nose at them. I'm sorry, it's really disgraceful that the plan that you were supposed to have still has holes in it. You haven't really finished much of anything this year. So I think you should get yourselves in order and finish something. And I would start with this, because people will notice that it's not opened in May. Thank you.
And Barbara, just to that point, the mayor did not appoint a committee at the beginning of the year. We have a new mayor this year. The commitment that was done last year was done by the previous
It's
mayor.
supposed to be done before that. Don't give me excuses.
Anyone else?
Mayor, permission to speak?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate once again that there's no need for a committee on that or a subcommittee. You know, it's really just a resolution from the council that would approve the start date. Our professionals, our DPW, our public safety, our BA, and the River Center would be the ones that coordinate all of those small details that are a part of day-to-day operations. So really, this is just about the council giving the green light on the start date. So I just want to state that one more time that, you know, really the programming and everything is really naturally falling under River Center, like he was talking about the programming with the nonprofits and things of that nature. That's not really falling under the council's purview when it comes to public safety and day-to-day operations. That's really falling under the VA's purview. So this is really just about the council passing a resolution and greenlighting the start date. So I really want to drive that home again that, you know, I wasn't really under the impression that we really needed to committee this out again. And I want to thank Barbara for her comments.
Mayor, may I add something?
Sure.
For Councilwoman Trigiano. Councilwoman Trigiano, I can hear your anticipation of getting this start date started soon. Can I ask where you stand on the fees then?
I believe that we should respect what River Center stated, which was to keep the fees the same for the Broadwalk.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Can I get a motion to close the public comment? Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up, since we tabled the first ordinance, next up is 2023-07, changing the name of a portion of Herbert Street to Oratory Way in Red Bank Borough, New Jersey. All right, there we go. Any public comment?
Getting the hang of this. Anthony Privatera, St. Anthony's. Just wanted to take the time to say thank you very much for addressing this and helping us get through the different resolutions and ordinances. Thank you to Laura and her work, and thank you to the mayor and council for all your patience in getting this settled. That's all.
I'm sure Father Al's going to be even more thrilled now that it's done.
I'm thrilled. We're all thrilled. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Motion to close the public comment on this ordinance only. Public. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a motion to adopt ordinance 2023-07?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Roll call.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Morandi?
Yes.
Councilmember Sturdivant?
Yes.
Councilmember Trigiano?
Yes.
Councilmember Ballard?
Yeah.
And Councilmember Goodrich?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, resolutions for the consent agenda. I have a note here before someone makes a motion to approve the consent agenda, 23-75. There was an amendment to this resolution. You want to talk about it, Chief?
Sure. So there's an amendment on what was originally posted as the resolution for the water sewer utility. It's to add a capital improvement outlay of $225,000 for a generator at the Bonding Place lift station. What that essentially means is that it'll be paid out of as an expense out of the utility rather than bonding it. So there'll be no debt service on it. There'll be no interest on it. We have the money in the utility. We're going to move it to the capital fund and make the payment. There's a back order of about 8 to 9 months on that generator, so it was somewhat urgent that we get it in now and be able to order it.
Quick question, because I haven't, we just started discussing that, but I realized I skipped the approval of minutes and reports. Can we jump back to that since we're not, is there a motion to accept the department reports for February? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next up we have some discussion and action items. First one is collaboration between the Red Bank Borough and the Red Bank Housing Authority.
Thank you, Mayor. I just asked that this be put on again, just so we can get a status update. I know I got an email from our attorney, Mr. Antonelli, who's been working with the Housing Authority attorney, Mr. Corriston, to create an agreement, and I'll let our attorney speak more on it, an agreement whereby if we were to provide the Housing Authority with soft cost funds to help them rehabilitate Evergreen and Montgomery Terrace, that the agreement would specify exactly what the funds could be used for and nothing else. But I'll let Mr. Antonelli speak more.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. It's just a very brief update. I did have a telephone conference call with Council for the Authority, as well as the Executive Director. I want to say it was on Monday. Basically, the Council for the Housing Authority is going to draft what I'll call is a grant agreement. So obviously, like some grants that we get from the county, or perhaps from the state, where it has to be used for a dedicated purpose. So they're crafting an agreement for my review, edit, and comment. And then I also asked the chief as well to, I guess, start having the conversations with the CFO with regard to how the borough's going to fund this grant agreement. So obviously, I know the Housing Authority is anxious to start this process, so I'm hoping to get some draft agreement within the next, if not by the end of this week, certainly by next week, and I'm hoping that we'll have at least a final agreed-to draft within the next week to 10 days, and obviously it would be presented to the mayor and council in advance of the meeting, so that we could have a discussion on it to make sure the salient terms are acceptable to you. And then as a parallel track, I'll coordinate with the chief on how best to fund those this grant.
Thank you. I have a question for you. Is the Housing Authority, or has the director contacted a professional so they can determine what those soft costs may be? Like, how is that going to be determined?
Yeah, Mayor, I think they have, and that's part of it. So they I believe, have some preliminary, I guess, I don't want to say quotes, but they've already kind of started that process, and of course that is something that you guys would also, be privy to and would know, right? So if they're hiring an engineer, for example, and that's expected to cost X amount of dollars, that will all be set forth in the agreement. Obviously, they're the ones that will be, contracting with the third parties, but that's part of it too. There will be a breakdown of the various soft costs and what the intended funds are for.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the update, Michael and Mr. Antonelli. Next up is the status of the senior center property to the Rossi.
Thank you, Mayor. I asked that this put on just so we could get a status update from our engineer, who is, I guess, looking over the parcel and will present us with some kind of idea, the council, of how we can bifurcate this property. So I asked that Mr. Herman be on so he can just give us an update.
Sure thing. Thank you, Councilman Ballard. So the update is we have the background deed research completed. We have the title report that was provided previously by Mr. Antonelli. So we've done the background homework. We're scheduled to go out to do the field survey work to map the property next week. I would expect by the following week we should have the mapping largely in order to where I could present a concept plan to the council, either through Chief McConnell or however you prefer to have that for any thought or consideration. If you recall, I had previously provided a rough idea of some of the features out there midway from left to right in the middle of the property, so to speak. That would probably be a reasonable point of separation that would be identifiable and easily mappable for future references. But I think I would certainly provide that, seek any commentary from the council, and then we could proceed shortly thereafter. We want to go to the planning board after that to perfect the, once we agree to the line work on the map, it would have to be a lot line adjustment, minor subdivision that would have to go before the planning board for consideration. So I would project if all goes well and I get a prompt response from council, then we could probably target the April 17th planning board meeting. That would give us the proper time for notifications and everything. And then once that's perfected, we could then process the Rossi paperwork accordingly.
I just have one question about that. So I know that it's in the master plan, and there's a lot of talk I've heard from residents about ultimately having, and I know Darren said we don't have all the easements, but ultimately having that kind of hiking path along the river. How would that path be affected by this property going into the Rossi? Or would it be?
That's actually an interesting question. I think I want to give a little bit of thought and research on that, but historically speaking, it's still going to be owned. I mean, the Rossi is recreation and open space by its very definition. So perhaps in the submission we would show, some type of reservation with the intention of, I mean, Rossi doesn't mean you can't do anything on a property. It just means it's not a developable piece for, some other type of use. It has to be recreation and open space. I don't think it would be an issue, but I can certainly confirm that, and then we can show something on that plat that would reserve, right, or even show a draft, Riverwalk type component there that could ultimately be either reserved or constructed at some point in the future.
Thank you. Anyone else have any? No? Okay, thank you, Ed. Thank you, Councilman Ballard. Next up, revised height limits in the waterfront development zone.
Thank you, Mayor. And the council talked about this at our last regular meeting. Ed, I was presented with a letter that you drafted. I guess Shauna asked that you look at the WD zone and the height restriction. I think it was 75 feet allowable. And you wanted, she wanted us to bring it back to the council to look at it again. So we discussed it, I presented it, we discussed it, and I think your proposal, if I remember correctly, said it should be reduced to 50 feet. And part of the reason is for better access and visibility to the surrounding area, namely the swimming river. And we kind of debated the height, whether it should be 50 or 40. Personally, I think it should be 30 if the objective is to provide access and visibility to the river. And I think the conclusion of this council was to bring you back on to give your expert opinion on lowering it below 50 feet. and if that is advisable or even doable.
Sure thing, Councilman. So just for a little bit of context, this WD zone has been looked at a few times over the years. When I first came to this area and started working in Red Bank, I think there was some litigation that had gone on. There was this particular ordinance at the time, prior to 2012, I believe it was written in a very confusing way. This particular section was referencing the height standard as a raw elevation above sea level, whereas every other measurement for all other buildings in the borough was measured in a typical way that everybody would understand, that you take the average elevation of the four corners of the building, and you add whatever height to that is, and it's in the borough, it's measured either to a flat roof, the top of the flat roof, or to the middle of a peaked roof, to the midline of that. So in this particular case, I believe it was actually 140 feet, but they reference it to mean sea level, which is the vertical elevation using the 1929 survey data, which is no longer used. Generally, it's the 1988 vertical datum has supplanted that one. So I think over a period of time, as developers and engineers, professionals that were submitting applications, there was just so much confusion that the council and the planning board at the time decided that they wanted to make some changes. So in addition to just making a singular standard, that standard was actually 75 feet, but it's 75 feet above sea level. So what I had reported previously was that the raw elevation of the existing ground throughout the WD zoned areas varies from, generally speaking, raw elevation raw elevation of roughly 10 to 30 above sea level using that reference. So that would result in allowable building heights anywhere from 45 feet to 65 feet if you're measuring it from the ground elevation on a specific property, the way most people would be accustomed to measuring a height dimension. So I don't know that there was necessarily any large detailed discussion in terms of what is the right number. I was asked to just provide some context in relation to the surrounding area, the surrounding zones. The reasonably abutting zones are the CCD2 zone and the BR1 zone. Both of those zones were limited to 40 feet in height. CCD2 is 40 feet and 4 stories. BR1 is 40 feet for anything other than single-family homes. So I think the conversations as they were sort of occurring at the time was, thinking that maybe given that area, 50 feet might be a reasonable common ground point. But you could argue that 40 feet is also reasonably relevant and appropriate. It is interesting to note that the recently approved master plan did identify, tweaking this zone height as a master plan goal. So it's not inconsistent with what has been most recently discussed and at the highest level in coordination with the planners that prepared the master plan update re-reg. So, Councilman, I hope that gives you at least the context. I'm happy to answer any specific questions anybody has.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. So you referenced the mean sea level measurement, which I think you said went back to 1929 and then was revised in 1988.
Yes. So there's a foot difference. So in other words, if it was elevation 75 in accordance with the MSL 1929 standard, it would be 1 foot lower, so it would be 74 would be the measurement for the NAVD 1988 standard, which is what everyone would reference today.
Okay, so that's the difference. That 1 foot difference is.
Yeah, it's only about a 1 foot difference, which in and of itself, I can recall an applicant coming in to the board at some point in recent history, and they had designed a building that was literally right at the limit, and then I had to advise them that you're using the wrong standard, therefore you're losing a foot. You may want to give yourself just a little bit of leeway so you're not building to an exacting inch and then you build it and it winds up being too high, and then we have to, deal with that after the fact kind of thing. So, and that's a large part of the confusion that happens. I always have to think about it because no one remembers exactly the differences, which one is higher, which one is lower.
And that was on the riverfront back in 2012, if my memory serves. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. So with that, I would propose that this council do consider revising the height limitations in the WD zone, and I would offer that it be a height of 40 feet maximum for consideration of the council.
I'm in agreement with that. I mean, I wasn't sure how, I guess Ed was just building a little cushion when he recommended 50, but if the two zones next to it are 40, makes sense. They didn't have, you said, I know they touched on it in the master plan, but did they put a height recommendation in the master plan, or?
No, they just said it should be looked at for reduction in height.
Okay.
I think that was a touch point that they were aware of, but they didn't really want to speak to necessarily, the exacting standard. That would be a policy decision the council would have to weigh in, make a decision on.
I just had a quick question. I've seen in other places 45 feet because it would allow for some other ground level issues, things that I would want to hear a little more on this.
I think your feed cut out there for a second, Kate. You said you had heard something about 45 feet, and then it cut out, and then you came back to, I want to hear a little more on this. Did I miss a piece in between?
No, I would like to hear a little bit more, background as to, we're picking numbers here. And is the reason because the zone's around 40, so the feeling is that this would be 40 as well?
Well, that's my thinking, and again, if the goal is to provide visibility to the river, I think 40 feet is better than 50.
Yeah, and from an environmental standpoint, it allows for that much more daylight when you're 10 feet shorter than 50 feet, so I would agree.
Yeah, I also agree with the 40 feet.
Well, looks like you have your answer then.
Okay. It doesn't have to go before
Oh, it was just discussion. I guess it'll be put on the agenda for the next meeting.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Next up is a review of Borough Code Section 205-3, our affordable housing obligation.
Now, this is all me. Thank you, Mayor. I've been looking at this for quite a while now, and specifically, Section 204-3, Affordable Housing Mechanisms, has a chart that guides development and how many affordable units are required in a new development. And currently, for development that's 10 units and under, there's no requirement for any affordable housing units. And the scale goes up to 20% of 216 units and over. And I think it's time that we revisit this again, because if I remember correctly, and it's annotated in the actual section, that this section was amended in 2020. And again, if my memory serves me correctly, these numbers were actually, I'll say it the right way, increased, in that there was less of a need for affordable units in development. I think we should look at this as a council and require more affordable units depending on the size of the development. For instance, where it says 11 to 25, it says 10%. Maybe we should discuss maybe a 15% requirement in affordable housing units. Because remember, this borough is over 400 units short in its affordable housing obligation according to Fair Share. So we have to start doing something to address this issue. The collaboration with the Housing Authority, should that go through, is one step, again, identified in our master plan as a way to address our affordable housing shortfall. I think this is another way to, again, it's going to be a small dent in 400 and some odd units, but it's something, because in 2025, we're going to have to go back to court and show that we're doing things to address our affordable housing shortfall. So again, I present this to the council for consideration to increase the requirement for affordable housing units in our future development.
So our fair share housing obligation, and I'm just looking at the grid that we amended in 2020, in ordinance 2020-18, the minimum percentage of affordable units for 11 units to 25 units was 10%, 26 to 150 was 15%, 151 to 215 was 17.5%, and anything over 216 was 20%. So you'd like the council to consider addressing 10 units as well? Michael, is my understanding you?
No, I think the entire chart needs to be looked at and possibly revised. And I'm throwing out numbers as an example, but maybe 10 and under, you do require at least one. Maybe 11 to 25 is 15. And again, I'm just throwing out numbers. These are not, this is for the council to debate. 15% at 26 to 150, maybe that should be 20%. Again, we have to put in place mechanisms to address our affordable housing shortfall. And this is just one of those mechanisms to start addressing that and show Fair Share Housing that we are trying to address the issue here in Red Bank.
I'm going to ask Dan to chime in on that, because the only thing that confuses me there is if we're going to say from 1 to 10 units, then your minimum percentage would be 10%. How do you address that in 10 units and under 10?
Well, I will say this. I mean, look, I think at this point it's something that probably internally myself, the chief, perhaps Shauna and Ed could have a conversation on. But, you know, obviously council can impose right now, 10 under, there's no obligation, you know, but obviously, you know, a council could address that by perhaps requiring it. But I mean, I think to Councilman Ballard's point, that I haven't seen this too much. I guess it's like a sliding scale as to the number of units. This is probably something that needs to be looked at holistically with some recommendations back to council. But obviously, I would defer to the proper committee, perhaps, to vet this issue.
And what committee would that be?
Well, I know you guys operate by committee here, but I'm happy to you know, collaborate with the chief and with our engineer and come up with a proposal consistent with Councilman Ballard's comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Because when you read the affordable housing mechanisms, there is some language later on in the ordinance that references developers of 10 units and off-site units and so on and so forth, which you may be able to help shed some light on what direction the council might go in.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just want to support Councilmember Ballard's suggestion. to up the numbers, no specific numbers at this time, but increasing the number of affordable housing units across the board, including 10 and under units, provided that our professionals agree to that.
10 and under is just going to be tricky if someone's building 2 units. We're saying that 50% of them have to be affordable if they have to build 1, so yeah.
Yeah, right, and that's, let our professionals make a recommendation based on total square footage or something like that. But I don't think it should start at 10 if it's, 8 units, one of them should be.
Or you could just start, instead of starting at 11, you could start at 7.
Right, exactly.
15%, right?
Exactly.
Either way, it'll be 1.
And again, as Councilman Zippert alluded to, there is a mechanism if you can't build because of your development an affordable housing unit, then there's a developer's fee trust that money goes into, and we use that for other things, home rehabs and things like that. So.
Anyone else have anything to add? No? Okay. I want to open the floor up to my colleagues for mayor and council comments. Anyone have any comments they need to add? No?
Go ahead, Jen. Good. I would just like to remind everyone, please, of the importance of adopting, not shopping, if you wish to add an animal companion to your family. There are so many animals out there that are in need of homes, whether it's permanent homes or permanent adoption or even fostering, to get them and you through a tough time. There's the Monmouth County SPCA in Eatontown, as well as really great animal rescues such as Rescue Ridge Animal Rescue that services both Monmouth and Ocean counties. So I would just ask you to consider that if you and your family are ready to add, fur babies to your family. Thank you.
Well, and to that point, John, I was happy to participate in transporting 2 puppies back to the United States last month. They were both adopted by loving families in Pennsylvania, and they were very happy to meet us at the airport when we carried the dogs back. While I have the mic, Mayor, if I may, the Public Works Committee met today to review status with our consultant. Our meetings are being held weekly as the team reorganizes in order to keep the committee and the administrator informed of Gary's progress. The Senior Citizen Center will be opening very soon, and I spoke to Jackie. We're planning a rededication of the building along with the dedication of the Councilman Thomas Henselman lobby. Hopefully we can set a date for that in the coming weeks. And Jackie also wanted to remind us that the seniors are having their St. Patrick's Day party on Wednesday, and we're all invited. They're encouraging everybody out there to come join the seniors in the wearing of the green. So wear your green when you come to the Senior Center party. And as Bob covered earlier tonight, the River Center Board met last week on the 28th of February. Everybody's excited for the spring season to begin, and I'm working with Bob and Jamie on some concepts to help attract new activities to the downtown business district and to the Broad Walk this summer. Next week, Bob and I are meeting to spitball some ideas for the possibility of street performers, and also the possibility of an art walk or an art show or some sort of open studios event to get folks moving about our art studios and our artist colony here in Red Bank. We have to schedule a parking committee next week to review the electric vehicle ordinance that Shawna returned to us after its initial workshop. So I wanted to thank Shawna for drafting and getting it off to the attorney, and Dan and I will connect on that later on in the week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your new job. No report from the Shade Tree as far as the Finance Committee. The 2022 unaudited financial statements are now posted to the website under the Finance Department if anyone is interested to review. We're pretty much complete, just waiting on the few things from DPU, so hopefully after your meeting today, we'll be able to settle and kind of finalize, because we were looking at introducing the budget on the 22nd, so be looking forward to hearing.
And the chief was in attendance, and we discussed your committee at length during the course of our committee meeting, so chief has the specifics.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is a request. I cannot be here on the 22nd. I don't know if council has any objection if could we move it to the 23rd? Just a request.
Is the budget supposed to be presented on the 22nd?
Introduced. Yes. I mean, so it was just a request, but I won't be at that time on the 22nd.
So will we have to move the budget presentation?
Oh no, it's not the budget presentation. It's
Okay.
just the introduction
Okay.
of the budget, and then
Typically, as most of you know, the presentation is somewhere between introduction and adoption. So we can obviously work that out with the finance committee when we can do that, where it's convenient for everybody.
Okay. So are you asking the council to introduce it in your absence?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have a quick comment. I want to thank the mayor for International Day for Women. I really appreciate that being communicated. I also wanted to emphasize one of the key strategies and initiatives this year is pay equity, which was within the last 100 years really focused and really being pushed by Billie Jean King. So I want to thank her works for having pay equity for women in their roles.
Councilwoman Trigiano.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to share the save the date again for the Environmental Commission's annual Green Fair, which will take place on April 20th at the Red Bank Middle School. I also wanted to thank the Animal Welfare Committee, the Shade Tree Commission, as well as the library, who will all be participating in that event. I also wanted to thank the Red Bank Primary School, who I know welcomed myself and yourself and others into their classrooms, into their home for Read Across America last week. It's always just a wonderful opportunity to connect with the students there and to, just spend time in community. I also wanted to give a shout out to everybody who's been working very hard at our warming center here in town. We've had a lot of code blues lately. We've had a lot of strong winds here in Red Bank. And I just wanted to thank all the people who have been operating the warming center. It's currently called Code Blue, I believe, through Friday. So thank you to everybody working hard there. And that's my report. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. I'd like to open up the floor for public questions and comments on any topic you desire.
Good evening. Cindy Burnham, 71 Wallace. So I've been reading, about the candidates that are running for council. And, every time that Tim Hogan is brought up, it always follows him that he's, the CEO of the hospital. That's his day job. And I just wanted to know, Mr. Portman, what is your day job?
I'm a general contractor.
You're a general contractor. Okay. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Good evening, Nicole Tate, 153 Hudson Avenue. I'm here to express concerns with the revised cannabis ordinance that was proposed and presented on February 20th. First, I want to thank the responses I've received because I've emailed all of you. I've received responses from Councilman Zipprich, Councilman Ballard, Councilwoman Morandi and Mayor Portman, so thank you for communicating with me on this issue. Through extensive dialogue with other parents at the charter school here in town, other community members, myself, folks in the cannabis business, those of you on the council, I'm becoming even more concerned the more we talk about the proposed draft ordinance. The revision defined very specific blocks in town where these retail locations would be permitted. And from what I've been told, the reasons behind these locations was that, let's see, I've received kind of explanations from you guys. The proposed changes being reviewed attempt to keep the streets as far away from schools, parks, downtown, etc. I've also received the comment that the locations were chosen simply to allow quick and easy access to non-resident Red Bank residents without disruption to our streets and neighborhoods. This makes me concerned because this district is very close to the Red Bank Charter School, and in a few instances, as far as my own mapping and others, it looks like it will be within the 1,000 foot in a couple places. So my question is, was our school simply overlooked, which raises issues of competency when drafting this ordinance, if you didn't realize that our school was right there? Or were we simply disregarded, which in my mind raises severe issues of efficacy, of ethical nature and representation? Are we being fairly represented? Are our children being fairly thought of in this, in this whole issue? We're not the first town in the United States to go through this. Cannabis has been legal elsewhere, and it's legal elsewhere in New Jersey. In fact, the New Jersey State Policy Lab at Rutgers University has been studying this. I found today, let's see, it is the New Jersey State Policy Lab report, Cannabis Legalization, a Baseline Study. I don't know if any of this material was referenced in your revision to the ordinance, but if not, it seems like there's some policy experts and urban planning experts at the Blaustein School at Rutgers who are doing some pretty good work on the impact on communities of cannabis legalization. I'm not anti-cannabis, I'm for cannabis. I am not advocating some not in my backyard type syndrome. I'm fine with cannabis in town. And I'm sure that some of our concerns about the proximity of these businesses to parks or schools or whatever, maybe they're alleviated if we look to how other towns have implemented these types of measures and look to whether our concerns are valid. Let's look at some data and facts, but I'm not hearing really any of that in this discussion. I don't know really what went into the draft ordinance or the draft revisions. And I just ask that our school, our community, and our children be equally represented, be given equal consideration, that we adhere to the 1,000 feet. I believe that there was an area on the west side on the east side near Welsh Farms that was initially going to be a permissible area, and I don't think that was in the latest revision. So now there's like a little pot district on the west side near our school, Newman Springs, and that keeps this area far from every other school, from a lot of other areas, but it's very close to our school, and it's very concentrated. So I just, ask for, I think, maybe some more analysis, consultation with experts doing work on this, and some more clarity as to why these streets were chosen, and maybe consider moving it further from our schools, or maybe distributing it through town and other acceptable areas. Thank you.
Nicole, before you step away, I actually had a conversation with Councilwoman Sturtevant today. Said she's the chair of the Education Technology Committee. And some of the comments that you had emailed to us, she and I discussed. I need you to understand that this ordinance hasn't been revised. It's what was presented as a working document.
Okay.
The Code Enforcement Committee is still taking all of these comments and all of the information that the residents and the businesses are contributing to them before they get that done. But Jacqueline and I both agree that the 1,000-foot rule applies equally to all schools in town. And I know Councilwoman Sturdivant, if you like to share what you shared with me this afternoon about your contact.
Right, so I really appreciate you bringing this forward. With just starting from the ground floor, we definitely want to treat all of our children equally and making sure that they're safe. So I think there was some, we actually, Council Member Morandi and I met with the charter school heads on Monday to kind of just talk through that, because there were some numbers that were thrown around. There's one, part of separation or foot for one group, and there was another, so there wasn't some consistent numbers being tossed around. So I could understand why that would cause the charter school community some angst, because you'd feel that there would be different, but we're not. I think that was just a mistake in terms of communication. But I think we had a really good conversation with the charter school on Monday. We're going to have more iterations. I'm also reaching out to all of the schools in Red Bank just to get their feedback, have an understanding what their concerns are, any recommendations that they want to make, and welcoming you to do that as well. I also am on a team with Councilmember Morandi, so she's going to give you more some of the details specifically to cannabis.
Yeah, I just wanted, and thank you for the email and the kind of, in our visit with Dr. Martello, and have talked to a lot of parents that have expressed concerns, and I think, and it's our fault for it not being very clear. So, I mean, first of all, the 1,000-foot state drug-free school zone doesn't apply to cannabis. So that's number one, right? Because it's not an illegal drug anymore.
Yeah, we understand that.
So it doesn't apply.
We understand. People still want it.
Well, that's what.
And every other school has it except ours right now. So.
But the proposed ordinance wasn't about distances. It was about location. So I think it kind of.
Well, the proposed ordinance created a little pot district near our school. I mean, our school is the only school near it. That's our concern.
So again, it wasn't distances, it was location. So I don't have the exact, Shauna would have to measure, but I think it was 750. The mayor had suggested 500. So there is no set
How is this supposed to make me feel better? I'm sorry, but like these I understand the technicalities. I'm well aware of cannabis is not a legal drug, so 1,000 feet may not apply, it may not, or may whatever. The point is, I don't see any other parents in town of other schools upset except ours, because we're the ones that are close to this little district. And the revised ordinance has now designated a very specific area. It's pretty concentrated, and it is right by our school. I don't know why the area near Welsh Farms is now not in it. I'd love to know that. And I'd like to know specifically what research was conducted to devise that this area is going to be safe, and that one thing everyone knows about policy implementation, there are always unintended consequences. You've created a very, very concentrated area near our school. And how do we know that our children are not going to be impacted by unintended consequences of creating this very specified region right by our school? And it is within the 1,000 feet. So I understand pot is not an illegal substance, but we are in a transition period. And again, Red Bank is not the first town to grapple with this issue. My concerns could probably be addressed if somebody could tell me they've done some research on this and spoken to an expert, that my concerns maybe could be alleviated by that. But I don't know that that's being done. I'm being told technical numbers, legal technicalities, and that as a parent doesn't make me feel better. Do you have a child at the charter school?
No. But
okay.
I was just trying to give you a little background.
I understand the background, but I want to know that my child matters to you guys, and it seems like every other child in this town does matter, but this area has been moved right by our school, and we've been overlooked. And now we're being told, oh, well, someone else suggested 500 feet, and wouldn't that be worse? And well, it's 750, but the 1,000 limit doesn't apply because cannabis isn't legal. None of that really matters to me. I want to know, is this safe? Do you guys know that this is going to be safe? Do you know that there's not going to be problems with traffic? I mean, when the dispensary opened up in Eatontown, Route 35 was a traffic jam. So now we're going to have an area right by our school where all of these business will be.
Nicole,
So,
if I may, I'm sorry to cut you off, but as I said, this ordinance that you keep referring to is not, it's not law.
I understand it's not.
So-
I'm
so
trying to
what-
advocate for it to be changed before it becomes law, even though, I mean, who knows how effective it will be, but still, like, that's why I'm here, because we are voicing concerns about the unintended consequences which always come with decisions like these. We now have a very defined area right by our school where these businesses are permitted, and they are nowhere else in town except for Newman Springs Road, which is a pretty drastic shift from the last ordinance.
But as I said to you earlier in this conversation, this was a working document that the Code Enforcement Committee had put forward for conversation.
Okay, well, I have
But
1
it's
minute
not-
remaining, so I ask that this draft that was unveiled on February 20th be scrapped, that we go back to what was passed before, and if you're gonna do any more work on this, you consult with people at Rutgers, other people focused on this, and you actually do the work of other towns like ours who have passed these successfully.
We hear you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
No, but can I ask a question though? I mean, only because I wanted to give you just some background on how we're not required or have to follow the 1,000 foot school zone, but because there's other requirements too. I've heard from parents that say, well, I want to see to make sure that it's from churches and playgrounds and daycares and other things as well. So we're soliciting input, and some parents have said that, to your point, it needs to be equitable as far as if we're going to list out distances to all the schools, which I totally agree.
Not only equitable, but reasonable, and most importantly, well-informed. Again, we're not inventing the wheel here. Other people have done this, and probably successfully. We should be looking to them, and I want to hear that that's been done.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of research, and I spoke about it at the other meeting. A lot of other towns have the luxury of putting the retail stores on highways. We don't have that luxury. The closest we get is Newman Springs. So if the majority of the residents say, that's all where we want it, that's where we'll put it. I mean, so it's really up to the town on how we want to treat it and where we want to allow it. So, I will say that the distance is like, it's close to 800 feet. It's not 1,000, but it's not, 100 feet. It's pretty far away. But again, it's up to what the residents want to do with it.
I want to forget revising it and just go with what we have.
But what we have doesn't protect us.
The problem that we ran into, Nicole, was that what we have failed at the zoning board, and the zoning board ended up not being able to render an opinion or a decision. What we have been discussing, all 7 of us sitting up here along with our professionals, is how do we come up with a modification to the original ordinance that's equitable and fair, and this is a completely new area of law, so that, we can look at what happened down in Eatontown on Route 35.
Yeah.
But,
we should ask Blaustein. There's plenty of experts, and I think there's probably some PhD students who think this might be an interesting case study. Maybe
Sure.
we should. I'd be happy to introduce you. I'm a Blaustein alum. I'll find some people. I'll send you guys some names. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm sorry, I have one more question from the stage. Nicole, you said you wanted to go back to the original ordinance. I'm at a disadvantage because I wasn't on the council at the time. What research informed the original ordinance that you're in favor of? Because I think we could start there.
I have no idea. I mean, what research went? I didn't draft that ordinance.
Okay, but then what was it about the original ordinance then that you feel is more favorable than this?
I don't like that the revisions have now crafted a very specific area, which is highly concentrated and right by my children's school. That's what I don't like.
Because the original ordinance had unlimited licenses, and they Correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman.
From what I understand, the unlimited licenses, I think by the state, I think there's some type of layer with the state where it's not like we're just going to have pot all over the place. But this isn't my job. It's actually probably more yours. You know, I mean, I have 2 small children. I work a full-time job. I've already spent a lot of time trying to sort through this issue just to make sure I'm advocating for my child.
Sure.
I prefer not even be here tonight because this is it's Read Across America, and my daughter's school has a competition for doing the most reading minutes, and she wanted me to spend minutes reading with her tonight and help her class win. So I've already spent a lot of time working on this issue because I don't feel like I'm being represented, and I do question the work that's been put into it and the thought. So I came here to make sure I'm heard. That's it. I'm happy to continue emails, but I mean, don't quiz me on what research was done on an ordinance I didn't write. Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just need to step away for a minute. I'll be right back. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Nancy Blackwood, 34 Chestnut Street. I have just a very quick question, and Mayor, with your permission, may I direct it to Michael Ballard, as I think he might have the answer to it. Michael, you mentioned today that there's a shortfall of 400 housing units to satisfy our housing obligation. Can you tell me what is the total number that we should have as a town? I was just curious. Or where I could find that information.
I'm not exactly sure what the exact number is that we should have, but I know that the number that we're short is something like 425.
425. Okay, do you know, Mayor, may I also direct my question to Councilman Ballard? Do you know where I could find that information or who would have that data?
It should be in our Fair Share Housing Settlement. That should be posted on our website, correct?
Okay, great. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And then Freddie next.
How's it going? Vicky Walker, One Allen Place. I just also want to speak to that 400 plus deficit. My concern is if you just increase the requirement, 10, 15, 20%, you're basically putting a handicap and a brake on development. So you may actually end up like over a 2, 3, 4 year period with fewer affordable housing units coming to fruition just because, developers will just step outside of town or, to the next favorable location. Obviously, it affects our performer greatly. So my thought was, it seems like even to remotely cut into 400 units, we'd have to build solely, maybe like 50 unit, 60 unit buildings solely dedicated to affordable housing. I'm assuming the state would have more grants and funding to that end, and I imagine developers would be more open to paying even a heavier tax, towards that cause. It just might be a different strategy that gets us there a little faster, and even if it doesn't get us there when you guys have to justify the attempt, at least it's been put out there and there's maybe some collaboration with some other developers to get at least 1 or 2 or 3 of these units, so we can really make a dent. Just a thought.
Thank you. Thank you. Ready?
P.O. Box 2074. Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. Just want to clarify something. Last council meeting is here about my address. Mayor, some of y'all councilmen don't know it, but I went through a lot. That's why I don't use my address. My house been stalked 3 times by a borough employee. Circled around the block 3 times. Was seen by my neighbors that really know him. And at the same time, the same borough employee had told a friend and a family member to distract me and my mouth. Then at the same time, the same borough employee, when I went to cross the street from one side to the other one, and the borough vehicle pulled the truck all the way up, keep me from blocking. Got notice, got letters. Went to the Attorney General's office in Trenton. Went to to the prosecutor's office, spoke to the mayor about it. Then I had another borough employee, was a Red Bank cop, threatened right out in the open when he retired, what he done to my whole family. Then he went to work for the borough. Told me to meet him after Chestnut Street when he get off work. These are the things that I have went through in this town, with my family being harassed and I'm being targeted and whatnot. I think I don't have to use my P.O. box. My P.O. box or my address when I come to a council meeting. All the letters I got in here from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Trenton got my P.O. box number. I think the young ladies, they seen them. And Zippers, I know you spoke about a couple weeks ago, the last council meeting, that Art Murphy did mention at the council meeting that I didn't live in Red Bank. He did. The reason why I didn't bring it up, Art Murphy came to me as a man and apologized to me for what he done. And what he done, I just want to show you some of the things that he done. At the time he was a councilman, that's why he used that and said that I didn't live in Red Bank. And you was a councilman at the time that this happened because I brought it up to you in front of you. These are tickets. 3 tickets. 3 tickets I got from Art Murphy with my truck parked up there on West Side Avenue. Went to court, Judge Henry dismissed them. Brought it to the council meeting, you didn't even open your mouth. That's harassment. That's harassment. That's why he said that. And if it's the same Art Murphy that you're talking about that said that I didn't live in Red Bank, I think the young ladies got the letter I just gave to them. That's the same Art Murphy that said just take him a bucket of chicken down to Chestnut Street. That's the same one who was caught on the camera making a racial remark. And also his brother running on the zoning board for councilman. That's the same Art Murphy we talked about, right? That's the same one, right? That's all I have to say.
Okay. We have someone online.
Online, Eileen, you have the floor. Eileen, if you could just unmute yourself, you have the floor. Eileen? We have another mic. Lisa, you can unmute, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lisa Bach, 216 Spring Street. And can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, awesome, thank you. So I also am a Red Bank charter school parent, and I do want to thank you all for responding to my emails, and also to some of you who have reached out, and I know you guys are busy. So taking time out of your busy day to talk to me, I greatly appreciated it. I know you guys have received my emails, but just as, in regards to the ordinance that's being drafted, and I understand it is a draft and it's not permanent, you guys did put the majority of the cannabis businesses in zone BR1. And Red Bank Charter School is the only school with not 1, but 2 locations in BR1. So we're not just talking, we have 2 buildings where children are in those buildings learning every day. And so you did share that all the schools, were receiving their 1,000-foot drug-free school zone except for Red Bank Charter. And while I understand that you've taken these streets and you put them in a very specific area, you can drop the drug zone to 0. And still, you're not going to find anyone from the borough, you're not going to find a parent, you're not going to find any heads of school walking through your doors and complaining because they're still safe. They're still being afforded to protect the areas, and they are being protected. So all I think we're looking for in all of this is to know that you guys hear us, you're listening, and you care about our children. It's about the safety of our children. That's all we're asking for. And so I really hope that you consider and put back in the 1,000-foot protection, just like every other school, every other park, every other church in town is getting. Because you're not going to get anyone else and you're not upsetting anyone else with the charter school kid, and that's not fair. So, while I understand it's not an easy path to navigate, I just hope that you can remember the charter school children, and you make them a top priority as you continue to navigate and figure out and draft this new ordinance. So that is all I have to say. Can I say 2 more things that are a little different? Yeah. At least one. I'd like to raise your glasses if you got water, juice, whatever in your hands. Today is actually International Women's Day. So I just want to give a shout out to all the strong women. May we know them, may we see them, and may we raise them. Thank you very much. Thank you for everything and for your time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
And Lisa, you still on the line?
I am.
I'm not sure. St. James and Red Bank Catholic may also be in the BR1 zone, but I wanted the chief to clarify that for me.
I do not see that in.
Red Bank Catholic would be in the CCD. I'd have to check St. James, but Red Bank Catholic is definitely CCD.
All right, thank you. But to your point, Lisa, all of our children are important to us. You know, as a dad, I completely hear where you're coming from, along with the other parents who have voiced their concerns. And this is a new area of law that we're all sort of muddling through. And I just want you to know that as I replied to you in your email, that I have a serious concern for the well-being of all of the children who attend all of our schools here in Red Bank. So thank you.
Yes, I've learned way too much about cannabis ordinances and businesses in the last 2 weeks. So I'd like to, if you need a subject matter expert, I may be your person. I'd be happy to join any calls if you need a resident.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jimmy Dark, 48 West Sunset Avenue. I'd like to ask this question that Michael Ballard. My thing is, down for the Sunset, they said this is going to be capped. Then you get at the question now, the paper says it's going to be a park. Second thing, my thing is, are you for the 4-way stop on Layton and Darkin Parker Boulevard? Next thing I'm gonna say, drove across town, you see 3 or 4 4-way stops. My thing is, this would prevent a whole lot of things. If you see the things that I see, and I say it's ridiculous, that a person had to run for their life and all this would help people feel safe. Everybody, kids, elderly, people in wheelchairs, walking, you see this, you shouldn't have to turn your head about 20 times and say, okay, now I got it. And my thing is, one thing too is I wanted to correct. These engineers and testers come in here talking about, oh, this and that, safe and all that. But my thing is they should be here to ask these questions. My thing is, you see people and you know people all around, and my thing is, you look at Long Branch, now you don't hear no more about it. People moved away, people don't die. Now you got a sign up there said dangerous, hazardous, stay out. You got Colonial High School. 100 people end up with a brain tumor. Some of them passed away, some got treated. And I know a young lady I just found out, she told me it's possible she's going to have a brain scan and find out that she had to have treatment. She had any problem. Second thing, Missouri, they built the school on the dock. Now they turn around and say they have to close the whole entire school down. Next thing, Missouri, they built the school there, Missouri, and they said they closed it down. And right down from, I think it's still there, down from Social Service Building in Freehold. And they built it. This happened maybe 15, 20 years ago. They were sitting out there talking about, I bought this place to raise my son myself. Now it is me, my son, or his generation, going to have health issues. And I always said, nobody lives, how many people live down there? And I'm saying these testers and these engineers, nobody don't live here. You don't never see nobody. My thing is, leave well enough alone, because this is a dangerous situation playing. Because when it happens, everybody gonna walk away and turn their back on it, turn their back on people. And the reason I'm saying that, you know, I've been down there 32 years, and I talk to people say I've been here 80, 90 years all my life. I asked them, they said, look, let me tell you something. Put a sign up there and leave it alone. You mess with something and it's gonna come up and come up. And I'm gonna bring this up, and I said, I seen it down at the daycare center by the athletic field. I don't know what's going on with that. You said the kids can't play in one spot. I said, why? They said, man, don't you know? That's been coming up for time after time. And it's still outside. You see it, and I said, well, you don't see nobody out here on this side. Why not? Why this on one side? They said, because it keep coming up. But my thing, Mayor Appointment Director, it's best to leave well enough alone. Because if you meet people that passed away, you never seen them more, and then you meet people that's in treatment, and now people say, why would you want to mess with something that you need well enough alone? If you want, my thing is, I'm not here to throw nobody under the bus, but if you want to experiment, get you a fish tank or get your Lego fish box, and then you can build what you want is. And people cannot make decisions, because I'm going to say it like this, nobody's here a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or tester. You cannot sit here, and I'm just going to speak for myself, you can't sit here and tell me it's good, because it's not good. You've been here long enough to know that this is a dangerous situation. My thing, I'm going to close it out. Marine Park, nothing wrong with Marine Park. Won't you go ahead and finish fixing that up? Yeah. That's been there for the longest time, 17 years, and even Superstorm Sandy. And you will give somebody a healthy place to go to. And I'm quite sure if you really want to see something, go to some of these cancer hospitals, meet somebody, sit down and talk to you. It's a devastating thing when you see somebody's life is messed up. And now everybody, and I said engineers, wherever they're testing, none of them don't live here. But I'm going to close this out. I'm not here to throw nobody under the bus. But Mayor Point, I want you to take this consideration. Just put a sign there for closed and put a picture up there and put a sun up there. Because where the sun don't shine, there's nothing going to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jimmy. I just wanted to clarify one point for you. Long before Councilman Ballard sat on this dais, long before him, it was one of the first votes that we had to take when I was first elected in 2008, was to what to do with Sunset, with the Sunset landfill. And I'm going to remind you of another thing. At the bottom of the Sunset landfill is the Red Bank Primary School. It's been there since the 1970s, and that was still inactively. No, I'm speaking. I listen to you, sir. Please give me my due. We listen to you, sir.
No, I'm not saying.
And you can come up here and you can cast all the aspersions you want, but that project was undertaken back in the early 2000s when they took the incinerator down, and once they did that, it perpetuated an ongoing engineering effort to clean up that brownfield site required by the State Department of Environmental Protection. And therefore, once Red Bank started that under 2 administrations ago, that's why it's still in motion today. So you can come up here and you can point the finger all you want at anybody on this dais, but I'm gonna stand up and talk back and let you know that this was not something that this council decided to do, and we don't even know whether we can do anything with that landfill right now.
But my thing is, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to let you know straight from the door. I don't have nothing against nobody, but I have a freedom of speech to come in here and talk about this. You don't live down there. I live there. So why start something that you can't fix or finish? You cannot fix something that's broken. And my thing is, if you're going to start something, let people know. Don't say it's the internet. Everybody don't have internet, computers, and they shouldn't have to say, we're going to go paperless. Everybody don't know. I mean, I'm telling you, I ain't throwing, you see, you understand. I said, I'm not here to throw nobody under the bus. That means I ain't saying nothing. I'm just making a comment. That's a general comment. And wait a minute, let me finish up before you come across. And you don't live there. I live there. Thank you.
We all live here, Jim. This is a small town. It's 1.8 square miles. And you know what? I am a cancer survivor. So I know what it's like to have cancer.
I'm just going to say it like this. You don't live down here.
All right. Anyone else?
Suzanne Scobie, 25 Cedar Street. I don't speak for any other board or committee that I'm a part of. Not to reiterate the thing, but I believe when I sat in the zoning board meeting in early January, because of the cannabis getting off the drug-free zone, something has to be done because 1,000 feet is not legit right now, correct? Right? They can have, because right now they did approve a growing, and I could be wrong in my terminology, but they are growing cannabis within 1,000 feet of the pre-K satellite school on Dr. James. And that was part of the zoning. And I think there was, with the state and everything rushing around, that was missed. That now we can't just arbitrarily say we are following the drug-free zone 1,000 feet rule. So something does need to be done, but I don't know if we have to create the whole wheel from the beginning. The other thing I wanted to bring up was I got this notice on my house, water notice, 25 Cedar Crossing. I live on 25 Cedar Street. But what sparked my memory was this is regarding the water meters. And to Ms. Boas, who mentioned how things aren't getting done, it's just, things aren't just getting done from, in general. I mean, this water meter started, I think, in like 2016, about 2016, I think is when the, 15-ish, when they gave the contract out. And the deal was that it was so imperative to bond for the water meters over 3,800 to 4,000 water meters to help with the overall cost. We wouldn't have to pay somebody to run around town to get the meters for accuracy, right? That's where we found out about the hospital not paying their share. So I'm curious, how is this not done? This is 2023, and we're still making people put in water meters. So I'm wondering, what is the goal, and how close are we able to accomplish this? Mine was done. I guess they just know what street I'm on. With that being said, too, my third point is, yesterday after leaving another committee that I'm involved in, and it was windy, as you all spoke, it's been very windy around here, and I'm not big on big grandiose ideas. I think to be smart and simple and just simple answer and simple ideas is important. So I was going home and I'm driving home and there's all this recyclable all in the street, in 2 streets that I passed. Why? Because it's windy. Why? Because we don't have friggin' lids. Can't we just get lids to keep it closed? Because what's the point of recycling if all the crap goes on the floor anyway? I mean, it's a simple thing. Maybe we can get a grant and work with residents to get them lids. Or maybe we can get, like I have the blue can that automatically has a lid that flops over. I mean, what is the point of recycling if it goes on the floor? That's simple, right? We have these grandiose ideas that we want to spend money and do things, but I think maybe doing a lid drive, maybe getting these other garbage cans that have the lids that flop over and working with people. It's nice, it rolls out. I don't think I bring it out every Wednesday, but I mean, it's just, you know, we talk about how important the environment is, but this is a simple fix. Let's, you know, we're always going to have wind. We just spoke, the hurricane season. We're always going to have wind in this town. And now that it's out, we have the ability to put out our recyclables every week. If it's a windy day on that Wednesday, there was a lot of bottles and plastics on my way home last night. So I think we should look at simple fixes and simple ideas to really make an impact.
Suzanne, do you have a yellow can from the Public Works Department?
No, I'm not a Cedar Crossing house. They have them. I have my own can.
No, but you can pick them up and they come with snap-on lids.
Correct.
There's been hundreds of them given
Correct.
All around the borough. All you have to do is pick one up.
Correct.
DPW.
But enforcing using the lids. A lot of them are overflowed. They don't put the lids on. You could give somebody a lid, but it comes back to, again, enforcing, right? Enforcing double parking, enforcing not parking in a handy spot. It's all great ideas. Don't park in a handy spot. It's great ideas. Yes, you gave them a lid, but let's educate them and tell them to use it. Or maybe they need bigger cans because they're not using the lids, right? We put things out there, but we got to enforce. So good idea. Now we enforce.
Cans with lids are available for free from Public Works, so spread the word.
Great, and now let's enforce to use it. If not, it's a waste of time.
Thank you.
minutes of my time, please. I just got to clear something up, Mayor, Councilman. So you've done that before. Simply, no hard feelings, but I used to live down here, West Side Avenue, right next to the Incinerator. And my father worked at the Incinerator at night, taking trash out of there. And we worked in there too, when the thing calmed down, because it was so hot. Cleaned them wrecks out so it'd be ready for the next morning. My father's gone. All the sanitation guys worked in there cleaning that pit out. They no longer here. Where the dump is at, you a couple streets away from the middle school. I was there when the middle school was being built down there. We played down there at the middle school. So it's a different. You look at this building right out here. It's sinking right out here. This used to be a car dealer. It's sinking right out here. It's sinking. Look right around the building, this building. It's sinking. The other thing, the tops you're talking about for the yellow cans, I have got some for people's houses. They're too small. They're like that. And 2 or 3 days, they fall up. People's ask for 2 of them. Then you got 2 in front of your house. You need, like she said, you need bigger cans. You need bigger cans. The cans are too small.
The cans were made available by the Monmouth County to the borough of Red Bank for free pickup. And so Monmouth County delivered 300, 400 receptacles to the borough for any resident to pick up and use. If you need an extra one, please spread the word. It's still available.
I mean, I spread the word that there's extra can, but the lady, then you got 3 or 4 cans in your yard. You only need 1. You only need 1 big one. That's it, with a top on it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No, you. Chris Sirico, Irving Place, Red Bank. What is the timeline for the cannabis so that the public and the community is aware? Because I believe it's vague right now of when it's going to go in front of you again and or approved, reviewed, and into law. What is the timeline? And the process?
There is no defined timeline, Chris. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow to go over all the comments that we've received over the last week or so, and we are hoping to introduce something shortly. I don't have a date, but this council needs to act because there are still applications coming through our planning department. So we have to act quickly, but there's no defined date. We want to get it right.
No, we appreciate you wanting to get it right because many people in the community, residents, the YMCA, the Jewish Temple, the Boys and Girls Club, the Mount Zion, the Zion Church, and the other churches and daycare centers who I have all met with are concerned and they want an opinion. So I want to be able to give them a timeline of when they can attend a meeting so that they can voice their opinions.
So again, there is no timeline. We want to get it right, but when we are ready to introduce an amendment, it will be advertised as always on our website, through whatever other means, text messages, so that residents can come out and voice their opinions on what the code committee has finally settled on. That's the best answer I can give you.
Okay. And is there any consideration to security in regards to these cannabis dispensaries? Some of which I understand are not going to have armed guards in them. So the ones that are not going to have armed guards, is there a program that's being put in place by the police department that is going to offer some form of active shooter training in the event that an incident takes place? My son goes to St. James School, and I don't want there to be, I want access to my son, and I don't want him being in lockdown due to a robbery, an armed robbery.
I'll defer to the chief.
So we for years have been doing active shooter training with all of our schools, so including RBC and St. James for, I don't even know, 7 or 8 years. About the time I became chief, so almost 9 years ago now. We do them relatively routinely with all of our schools.
would you offer that active shooter training to the dispensaries?
We haven't specifically thought about that, but we do active shooter training at request with other entities in town. For example, we've done it at the Count Basie Theater, we do it at the hospital fairly frequently, so we do it, but yeah, we haven't specifically discussed that. But the state sets the minimum guidelines for security through the CRC for these establishments, and they have to, as part of our process in Red Bank, submit a security plan approved by myself prior to the planning board application.
I'm familiar. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, there was one person at home that raised and lowered their hand several times, so I'm not sure if she just gave up or what, but Barbara Monahan, if you'd like to speak, and she just raised her hand. Okay, Barbara, you can unmute, you have the floor.
Okay, hi, I'm Barbara Monahan, and I live at 30 Pinckney Road, Unit B. And I did want to speak to the women who were fearful of the cannabis store being in their children's neighborhood. 200 feet closer to the charter school than they would like. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct? Can anyone hear me or you
I
can't
can,
hear
I'm
me?
just not sure the question. Are you?
I'm asking you if my question is correct. Is the proposed store 200 feet closer to charter school than they would like it to be? They want it 1,000 feet away? At least? What?
Right, roughly that was the concern. It was
Not a specific store, right, but just the zone, the allowed area would be 200 feet.
Kind of the gist of it.
Yeah.
I suggest they visit one. The one they referenced in Eatontown specifically, with all the traffic they talked about, that was very novel when it first opened. And that's the reason for all the traffic and the hysteria. I'm speaking because I have a medical marijuana card, and I use little micro doses of marijuana to control pain. It's so much more preferable than any narcotic or even Advil, which is just tears up my stomach. I'm not an atypical marijuana customer. And when I go to Eatontown, there is security in front of the store, not armed, not a threatening person. It's just a person who checks ID before you even go in, so that they know you're a legit customer. And when I go in there, the people are knowledgeable, professional people. They're trained. So I don't feel it's any more dangerous than your child walking past a liquor store on their way home from school. Honest to God, it's just not terrifying or threatening. And in terms of shooter training, is that the fear also? I mean, my infant granddaughters had to learn to hide under their cribs at daycare because of active shooter training. So my best suggestion is to have the people visit one of these cannabis stores before they rush to, this is a terrible danger, because it really is not. And that's been my experience. And by the way, a person is allowed, I think it's 65 grams of marijuana a month. And I use the little microdose edibles, which a lot of people do, a lot. And I'm told I will never be able to buy enough of those to reach 65 grams. So I don't even go near the allotted amount. really not a terrifying thing. That's all.
Thank you. Any other?
Chris Sirico, 31 Urban Place, Red Bank. It's not a terrifying thing, cannabis. I'm actually building a cannabis dispensary down in Florida right now in construction. So it's here to stay. We've approved it, but it is a cash business. And with that being said, it becomes a target. And that's why the conversation of active shooter, a realistic conversation of active shooter, is being topicked right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't realize I was allowed to come back up, but since someone, I guess, addressed a question to me, for the record, I have a medical marijuana card. I have been to a dispensary. I am not against marijuana. This is about the fact that it's near our school, and we just don't really know if there's unintended consequences, and the gentleman that just spoke mentioned one of them. That's kind of an unknown. I'm just not comfortable with that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Have a motion to close the public comment? Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second?